Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, Books with Brie. I'm Brianne, and today I am bringing you guys my book review of Misery by Stephen King. So the basic plot of Misery by Stephen King follows two main characters, one Paul Sheldon and the other Annie Wilkes. Annie Wilkes is described as this unhinged woman who lives on her own, and she has a lot of enemies is what she believes, and many people don't actually like her. And Paul Sheldon is this revered author who's written many different romances based on the main character that he has named Misery. And so once Paul Sheldon gets into this devastating car crash in basically the middle of nowhere during the middle of a snowstorm, Annie Wilkes stumbles upon his car, and instead of calling an ambulance or taking him to the hospital, she decides to take him to her house and lock him up in her guest bedroom after splinting his legs and giving him this strong pain medication that he ends up addicted to, which plays a major role in the plot of this book. Once he is well enough to think and have coherent thoughts and conversations with Annie, she ends up coercing him, or basically threatening him, that if he does not rewrite a new Misery novel, because she didn't like how they ended, that she would hurt him even more and possibly kill him and her, leaving them both there in her house to rot, considering she is almost a complete shut-in. And so we follow Paul Sheldon as he is trying to survive in the captivity of Annie Wilkes. Personally, this I found to be a great introduction into the Stephen King books. I've always loved the idea of being a major King fan, and I can say I really am, because he comes up with some very creative ideas. This one, though, I would not say would be my favorite. Right now, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, and I am looking forward to reading more books by King, but at a later unspecified date. One thing that I really loved about this book was the fact that it is set in a parallel universe to ours, sort of, because every person, place is supposed to be a thing of fiction. So it exists in our world without us, and so we're left to watch all of these very real and horrific things happen to Paul Sheldon, and all of the very real end results that he would get from it, including PTSD and being physically hobbled for the rest of his life. It is just such an enthralling story, and so very real and horrific, and it does its job of being terrifying because it is set in reality. There is no works of fantasy in this, and no made up things. This is all real. It is not based on real life actions and things that have happened, but it is based in reality on things that could happen, and that's what makes it scarier than what it would be if it was based in fantasy. A major critique I have for this book is I think the main character, yes, he is a man, suffers very greatly from what I'd like to consider the male gaze and the male thought process. Now, I know a majority of men do not think like this, but I have found that when reading from a male's point of view, there is some excessive focus on the female figure, and they are kind of slower to come to conclusions that should be very obvious, especially with what that character does. And for Paul Sheldon, he should have come to some of the conclusions that he did in this book a lot sooner than he did, specifically because of the research he did for one of his first misery books. He should have caught on a lot quicker to Annie's mental health issues, because they are made very obvious and very clear to the reader, and it's just kind of hard to understand why he doesn't catch on quicker. And that could be because he is focused more so on the pain of his legs and the need for this drug she gets him addicted to, or it could just be he doesn't want to admit it because it is already his daily life and how he has to live through this horrific event. But it is still confusing as to why it took him so many pages to have it click that there was something majorly wrong with him and that he was in major danger around Annie. Personally, my favorite parts of these were when we got to see glimpses and chapters of the new misery book that Paul Sheldon is writing for Annie, and that kind of kept me interested because I wanted to read more of what was happening in that novel within this novel. And I'm kind of curious to see, I kind of doubt it, if Stephen King actually has any of that open to anyone else and like an actual copy of that misery book, but I don't think so. But I found myself more interested in the novel that the main character was writing than this story itself, which is not a good thing considering I was looking for a horror book and I was looking to feel terrified and enthralled in the world, and this took me a while to read. Like, I could not get through it as quickly as I wanted to. Personally, I think this book does an amazing job to bring to light the reality and dangers of what it means to be more introverted and not have very many connections with people, and how amazing the internet has become to make it easier to know when somebody has gone missing, because it took the people in Paul Sheldon's life almost an entire year to realize that he had gone missing. 2 ex-wives, his publishing agent, and publishing house took almost an entire year to realize that he had gone missing because he was very secluded in his actual personal life. Sure, he went out, he partied, he had a good time. He was not an innocent and introverted person when it came to going out and celebrating and having a good time. But when it came to his personal life, he was extremely introverted. He lived on his own. He didn't talk to his neighbors very much, or else they would have realized that he himself had gone missing a lot sooner than they did. And personally, I think that's the wonders of the internet and knowing people, is that if something happens to you, they are going to know almost instantly that something has happened and something is wrong, because they know you, they know your patterns on the internet, and they know what is normal for you and what is not. And Paul Sheldon disappearing for an entire year almost did not seem off to anyone because he was so introverted, and I think that's terrifying. That's what really scared me about this, because I am personally more introverted in myself. When it comes to my home life, I stay in my room, I read, I write. Occasionally I post on social media, but I don't have a very frequent posting schedule, and it's not always reliable that I will post on anything other than YouTube. So, it's terrifying, and that's the reality of it too. If you're not consistent with things and you're not close with people, it's going to be extremely hard for somebody to be able to tell if something has happened. And out of this whole book, I would have to say that my favorite line would have to be when Paul is thinking and he says, "Get moving, idiot. You have no time to enjoy being stoned." That is on page 112 of my edition of Misery, which is from Pocketbooks. And honestly, I laughed my ass off. It's in the middle of a very serious scene, but it takes the time to create a lighter atmosphere to make it easier to read and get through and process. Because if you can't laugh during some of these books on the little bits of humor that are scattered throughout, you cannot handle horror, because it is meant to be absolutely terrifying, but authors tend to include little bits of humor and other aspects into the novels as to lighten it for the readers and take away a little bit of the seriousness. Again, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars, and I recommend it for anyone looking into reading Stephen King books for the first time. It was a very good introduction into his books and his writing, though I do put very many trigger warnings on this, such as assault, abuse, and many, many more, including drug use and self-harm and thoughts of attacking others. It is riddled with it. Blood, gore, all there. Very hard to read when those are very triggering to people, so please keep that in mind before picking this up, and, you know, just keep me informed if you guys decide to read it, because this might end up being a favorite of mine from Stephen King, but at the moment it's just not, because I don't have enough reference for his books yet. Alright guys, that was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section below what you guys thought of Misery, if you've read it, or if this video swayed you to read it or not to read it. I'm very curious to see what direction that thought process goes.